Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, and today we are going to be ranking the 100 books that I read in 2024. It is the 1st of January today of 2025, so I thought it was very appropriate to go through all of the books that I read last year and just rank them and have some fun going through remembering all the books that I read. So let's jump into it. Today I'm going to be using a website which has been used by many booktubers, which is called Tiermaker, where you get to basically create your own little tier chart thing with all of the covers of all the books that I've read and be able to pop them into categories. Now, I've made these categories, so let's go through them. I'm looking over here because this is where my computer is, so don't mind that. I'll try and keep my eyes on you guys though. So we've got up the top, the first category is 5 stars. Obviously, these are books that I've rated 5 stars. I love them. They were so good, and I definitely give books 5 stars based on vibes, very much so. I am very particular about giving certain books 5 stars, but there definitely are some up there. And then we've got Page Turner, which are definitely books that were close to being 5 stars. I really enjoyed them. I was just smashing through them. Loved the vibe, really good, but they just didn't quite give that 5-star feeling. Then we've got Hidden Gems. These ones are books that I either just had very low expectations of and they did really well, or books that I just felt like were really good and I really enjoyed them, but they just didn't quite hit that mark of being one that I was like really enjoying, smashing through, but it also wasn't a bad book. And then we're gonna have Wasn't the Best, Wasn't the Worst. I like this category because I feel like this one is like those books where I'm like, you know what, it wasn't a bad book. I don't want to say it was a bad book. I also just like, it was a pretty average read. Usually these are ones that I just like cannot remember. I remember having a good time reading it, but I cannot remember anything about it. I feel like a lot of us have that. And then we've got Wasn't a Fan. This one is just absolutely wasn't a fan. I do not like rating books bad. However, there are some books that I just don't enjoy. A lot of these books should have been in my next category, which is DNF Dungeon, but I'm very bad at DNFing. Also, a lot of those books were book club reads, which I feel like I can't DNF a book club read, which I want to change this year. And then obviously we've got the DNF Dungeon, which are books that I've DNF'd. I'm not going to have a lot in there, but there are some that I've popped in there and we will see. So let's jump into it and start popping these into their categories. So the first 4 that I've got here are actually just super cute little Christmassy short stories that Amazon produced with a bunch of like well-known romance authors like Tessa Bailey and Ali Hazelwood. There is a 5th one, but I didn't read it because I wasn't aware that it was part of this series, and so I probably might read that later, but I feel like the time has passed. Christmas has passed, New Year's has now passed, so I don't know, we'll see. These ones I enjoyed. They were really cute. However, I did like some more than others. Surprisingly, Ali Hazelwood was in The Hidden Gem, and also Tessa Bailey I didn't love all by my elf. This one just was not my vibe, and I say this one wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. So when I say surprisingly for Ali Hazelwood, I just don't vibe with her books. I think it's just the science behind them. I don't know. I just don't really vibe with them. There are some that I like, and this is definitely one of them, but it was a super short story. They're like 70 to 100 pages, so quick. I read all of these in one day, and yeah, that's probably what I would rate them. They were cutesy, not the best things you'll ever read, but they're fun. Okay, now moving on to one of my all-time favorite books of this year. Now, this is The Shadows That Listen by Louisa Carmody. This is actually written by my beautiful friend, Louisa, that I met on Book Talk, and we've become very close. She's been writing this book for so long. She's been talking about it on her Book Talk, and she finally released it. It's actually not released yet. She's released it to a bunch of ARC readers, which I was lucky to be one of them, so I have been able to read it, but it is releasing on the 9th of January, which today that I'm recording this is about 8 days away. When I post this, hopefully it is soon, or it has already been released. So definitely go check this out. It's such a good fantasy read. I ended up rating this one 5 stars, and I'm just really want to put this out there. I am not rating this 5 stars because it was written by my friend. I just wouldn't do her a disservice of lying about her book to people who are actually considering reading her book. Don't think that just because I'm friends with her that I'm going to rate it 5 stars. I just actually really enjoyed it. She did such an amazing job. It's really unique. It's like demons, humans, angels, and she just paced it so well. I really loved it. I actually did a recent reading vlog and I read this book in that vlog, so go check that out if you want to hear more about like the vibe of it and I just explain it more, and obviously you get to go along in my reading journey of reading it. So yeah, go check that out. I really, really enjoyed it. So happy to put in 5 stars. It was really good. I cannot wait for the next one, and I've got her launch party in a few days and I'm so excited. And moving on, we've got Clear Q. I didn't love this one. This one wasn't a fan. It was a book club read. This one I don't know if I would have DNF'd it, but it was close to a DNF. I just wasn't vibing this. It was just so cheesy. Then we've got Save Me, which is actually the second book in a series also written by this beautiful friend that I met on Book Talk, Monique. Haunt Me is the first one. So we've got Haunt Me, then Save Me. These were really good. She sent me Haunt Me in a PR package and I loved it. It was so good. I read it all in one day. I'm going to give that one 5 stars. I'm actually going to give it 5 stars because I really loved it. I was just surprisingly shocked by how good it was, especially because I hadn't read a lot of dark romance. So I was really nervous, but it just had the right amount. There were definitely times where I felt like it was super icky, but it like pushed me outside of my comfort zone in like a really good way, and I really enjoyed it. The second book I also really enjoyed, not as much as the first one. There was definitely a lot more intense triggers in that one, so there were some things that I had to skip over, but I still really enjoyed it. She did a really good job, so I would highly recommend that series for anyone who likes dark romance. It is continuing. She's currently writing the rest of the series, so jump on it now, and they're super quick and super easy to read. Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This one is actually my first Abby Jimenez book. I only read it recently and I'm so keen to read some more. I love this book. This was a page turner for me. Then we're going to move on to Sky Shade. Now I'm going to bump up Lightlark and Nightbane up here so we can see them 3 in a row. I read them all this year. Lightlark was definitely a hidden gem for me. I had very low expectations for this book because I just heard such mixed reviews and I ended up really enjoying it. Nightbane I actually enjoyed more, but I don't think it was like amazing. It wasn't a page turner, but I really enjoyed it, especially the ending. I was like, oh, this is so good, and definitely had a better vibe than Lightlark did, but I definitely would say that they're kind of on par with each other. Whereas Sky Shade, this one wasn't a fan. I was so disappointed in this book. It just had such high potential, especially because I really, really enjoyed Nightbane. I was so excited for the next book. I'd hyped myself up so much. I was at the shops on the day it released, bought it straight away, read it straight away, and I was just very disappointed in this. Then we've got Hexed. Now, this one is part of the Never After series, which we've got down here. I'm not going to move them up because it's going to take too long, but let's go through this. If you've not heard of this, this is a series by Emily McIntyre. They're the Never After series, which are retellings of Disney movies, and they're so good. They are dark romance, so definitely check trigger warnings, but this is a good dark romance series to get into if you are new to dark romance. So we've got Hooked as the first one. This one was a hidden gem for me. I actually really enjoyed it. I know that a lot of people don't, but I really did. Then we've got Scarred. Okay, I'm gonna put that in wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. It just was the vibe of the book. It was set back in time, and I think I just didn't love that, and just the way they were talking about things, and there were a few intense dark moments that I kind of struggled to get through, but it wasn't the worst. Then we've got Wretched. I really, really enjoyed this book. I'm going to put that one in page turner. I really, really liked it. It was good. Then we've got Twisted, which I also really liked, but I'm going to put that in hidden gem. That one was really good, and I really liked that one. It was based on Aladdin, which is one of my all-time favorite Disney movies, so that was really good too. We've got Crossed. This one wasn't a fan. I think it wasn't a bad book, and the only reason I'm putting it in wasn't a fan is because it's based on the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and as a religious girly, I really struggled with kind of the idea of like a priest doing bad things, naughty, morally grey things. It just really rubbed me the wrong way. So I think if you're not a religious girly, you probably might like this book, but it just hit me the wrong way. But it wasn't bad, it was just I couldn't push past that side of it. And then we have Hexed, which I loved. This was a recent read. Ooh, where do I put it? I'm going to put that in page turner. I really, really liked that one. It was released, I think, at the beginning of November. I'm going to say the 5th. And I was so excited for it. I had no idea that it was coming out, and it was just so good. It was based on The Little Mermaid, and I had such a good time reading that. Songbird and the Heart of Stone. Now I'm going to bring up The Serpent and the Wings of Night here because I did actually do a reread of The Serpent and the Wings of Night because Songbird and the Heart of Stone was coming out as a new release also in November. So these are written by Carissa Broadbent. I really loved the first 2 books. books, which is The Serpent and the Wings of Night and then Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I was planning on rereading both of those just to kind of catch myself up because I read them a really long time ago. However, I only got to The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This one is a page turner. I really, really love it, really enjoy it. Vampires, trials and all of that, really fun. And then Songbird just didn't hit it for me. I'm going to put it in wasn't the best, wasn't the worst because it really wasn't a bad book. I just felt like the pacing of it was so intense. It was crazy and there was so much potential for this book and it just didn't hit the mark for me. However, it still definitely has potential for the next book. I very, very much have high hopes for that one. And so we'll see where it goes. I don't mind the characters and I also love Kristen Broadbent's writing. She's really amazing. So I'm definitely have no qualms about reading the next one. I was a little disappointed with this one. Then we've got The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This one was a book club read. I didn't mind this one. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. It was definitely a unique thriller that I've read, so that was fun, but wasn't crazy about it. The Wife and the Widow, I'm going to put in wasn't a fan. It wasn't bad. I think I just read this book at the wrong time, and so I just didn't vibe it as much as I could have. Then we've got The Hurricane Wars. Again, really didn't like this. I think I would have DNF'd this book if I had, one, been reading it physically, I read it on audio, and two, if it wasn't a book club read. Because it was a book club read, I felt like I had to push through. However, the world building was so intense, and the writing style, like she just used way too many words in every sentence and it was just really hard to get through. Then we've got Frida McFadden, The Co-Worker. This one wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. It was a book club read. I didn't mind it. However, I just feel like I've heard such good things about Frida's writing and I do know that this is one of them that is like not up there with the best. So I definitely still have high hopes for her writing, but it was fine. So I'm going to bump Icebreaker up here. Icebreaker was actually a reread for me this year. It was kind of like one of those comfort rereads, which I do a lot. It's like watching Gilmore Girls and Grey's Anatomy over and over and over and over and over again. It's just a comfort thing. So I reread Icebreaker and I really enjoyed it. And it was just, I just love that book so much. It's just so cute. And we've got Wildfire, which I read this, I feel like at the wrong time. Not necessarily at the wrong time. I still really enjoyed it because I really love this series. However, I just read it around my wedding and around my honeymoon. And so I was just not able to really sit down and delve deep into the story. So I just felt like I didn't connect with it as much as I could have. So I'm going to say wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. Daydream, however, was a 5-star read for me. I loved this book so much. I related to Hallie so much. This girl is me in a fictional character and Henry is just so sweet. I could rave about this book forever. It's just so sweet, so lovely. 100% 5 stars. Could probably give it a 6 star. I just loved it so much. Then we've got The Veiled Kingdom and Hunted Heir. This one is definitely more vibes than plot, but wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I really didn't mind them. I am a vibe girly, definitely. I am not going to throw away a book just based on the fact that it didn't have any plot, but yeah, it wasn't crazy. And then we've got The Phantom Limb by Lucinda Berry. This one was a spontaneous read because my bestie T, she actually was getting my other bestie Liz to read it and she was like, Tay, you should read it too. And I was like, you know what? I just finished the book. Why not? I'm going to read it. So I did and I loved it. It was so good. Definitely a page turner. I could not put it down. It was so fascinating and really good. So I'm really glad that I read that and I'm definitely going to read more of Lucinda Berry 100%. Now, Ali Hazelwood, like I said earlier, just am not a fan of her. This would have been a DNF, but it was a book club read. I just didn't like this book. Quicksilver, I loved this book. I'm giving it 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. Callie Hart's writing is really good. The world building, everything, I just really enjoyed it. There's one thing though that could possibly bump it down for me, but I feel weird about bumping it down for this reason because it's a simple fix, Callie Hart. If you watch this, which I know you won't, but we should all petition to tell Callie Hart that her chapters are so long. They're way too long. I'm a slow reader, and so having chapters that say it's going to take me an hour to read is so disheartening. And it really got to me whilst I was reading it, but I really enjoyed the story, so I was like pushing through. But I'm really hoping that the second book that's being released at the end of this year will not have such long chapters. Let's really just cross our fingers, cross our toes, and pray to Jesus that those chapters are going to be shorter because it's a really good story. Then we've got Heartless Hunter. This one is by Kristen Cicerelli, and I really enjoyed it. Page turner, such a good, easy fantasy read, Witch Hunter, say less, so good. Then we've got King of Wrath, which I'm going to put in Hidden Gem. I really didn't mind that one. We've got King of Pride, which wasn't a fan. I'm going to say that was based on just wrong time, wrong place for me with that one. And then King of Greed, also hidden gem. I really enjoyed those two. The Silent Patient, unfortunately, wasn't a fan. I don't know what it was about that book. I don't know if I'm just maybe a very picky thriller reader, because I do like some, but most of them I don't really love. Now moving on to the Chestnut Spring series. I love this series so much. I'm going to kind of move them all over together. I'm not putting them in order because that's just all too hard, isn't it? But we will go through them in order. So we've got Flawless, which I did really enjoy. It was fine. It was good. I'm going to say hidden gem. It was good, but it wasn't the best. Then we've got Heartless. This one, ooh, so good. I really, really loved it. Definitely a page turner. We've got Daddy Cade, and he's just beautiful and stunning, and I really love that book. And then we move on to Powerless. I am a hockey romance girly to my core. I love hockey romance, so I was so excited for this one. Definitely not as based around hockey, which is fine. It was a little bit of a shock, but this story was really good, and I really, really liked it. I'm definitely going to put it in hidden gem though. I think it's definitely probably in between. It could definitely be a page turner, but it wasn't my absolute favorite. So yeah, it was good, but I don't know, I just didn't connect with those characters as much. Then we've got Reckless. I loved Reckless. Definitely up there with Heartless. Both Heartless and Reckless have tropes in them that I don't love. However, Elsie Silver just wrote them so well, and I really, really enjoyed these ones. And then Hopeless, definitely didn't love that one as much. I'm going to put in wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I know some people really hate this book. It wasn't bad. I just really, really didn't like the age trope in this. And I mean, the Heartless has the age trope, but it definitely does it way better. And the character was just written, like the female character was written like she was literally 12. Like there was just moments where it was cringe, and it was just, yeah, I just didn't love that one as much. Then we've got The Deal, which again, hockey romance, love a hockey romance. So this one was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. Definitely a page turner. Any hockey romance is really going to get me. I just such good vibes, and I love them. Now these down here, I have no idea what order they go in. I cannot tell you, and so I'm going to put them in wasn't a fan because I didn't actually really like them. Moving on to Butcher and Blackbird. I loved this book. So good. Had me cacking it. It was just such a good time. Leather and Luck I definitely think was not as good, but it definitely still had those good vibes. So really, really enjoyed that. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, not as much. I really didn't love this book as much as I thought I would. The Tattooist of Auschwitz, this one is one of my all-time favorite books, 100% a 5-star read. I was very nervous to go into this book because I had never read a book like this. I've never read a book about World War II, but I'm so fascinated, and so it was really, really insightful to read a book where you really got the view of someone who is in a concentration camp, and like it was just so fascinating, but in like a really intriguing story that really kept you captivated. And I like smashed through this book so quick. I definitely could have finished it in one day if I wasn't so busy. Moving on to Feybound, definitely wasn't a fan of this book. Now, Reminders of Him wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I know some people really love this book. There was definitely moments where I was really enjoying it, and I think that maybe it was the time that I was reading it. I might really enjoy it later on. Like if I reread it, I think I could have enjoyed it a little bit more than I did, but yeah, it just wasn't the best. Then we've got The Way I Used to Be and The Way I Am Now by Amber Smith. I loved these two books. The Way I Used to Be is definitely a 5-star read. It made me feel all of the feels, and I definitely related to this book very well, and so yeah, I really, really, really liked it. 5 stars, but check your trigger warnings with that one. Now The Way I Am Now, very, very good book as well. However, just not as good for me as The Way I Used to Be. Definitely very close though. I wish we just had a little bit more closure in that book. Moving on to Powerless. Powerful and Reckless. Powerless definitely wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I don't think it's a bad fantasy. I think it's quick and easy. I just wasn't prepared for it to be so YA, and 2, I just had such high hopes because of the hype that was around this book. I just was a little bit let down with that. However, Powerful, that one was actually a 5-star read for me. I loved it so much. It was so beautiful. I loved the story. I loved the characters, and I bawled my eyes out at the end. I could read the end of that book right now and start bawling again. Every time I look at it, I just absolutely bawl. Reckless, this one definitely wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I just had such high expectations for it because I was just expecting Lauren Roberts to kind of learn as she'd gotten older and had written a little bit, and it wasn't great. It just felt like we were going around in circles with that one. Fall With Me by Becca Mack, I was so excited about this book, but let's talk about Consider Me first, which is actually the first book in this series. The reason why I only have this one, and then which is the first book, and then for me the fourth book, pretty sure, is because Consider Me was a reread. This is the same as Icebreaker. It was a comfort reread. This one was 100% a page turn for me. I really love that series. It's my all-time favorite hockey romance series. So I was so excited for Fall With Me. I had such high hopes for it. I went and got it as soon as it was released, which was only a few months ago, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. 5 stars. I had the best time reading it. It was just so good. The story was great and the characters were great, and it was just a really good time. So if you like hockey romance, please read this series. It's so good. Now moving on to Emily Henry. I have a very weird relationship with Emily Henry because I read Happy Place 2023 and I didn't love it. Then I was very nervous to read any more of her books. However, then I picked up the rest of them on audio and I loved them. Some of my all-time favorite books. I would say that People We Meet on Vacation, definitely a hidden gem. Book lovers would be Page Turner, and Beach Read, 5-star read. That's what I'm telling you. Beach Read was so good. That story was so beautiful. It was so good to read. I smashed it. I loved it so much. Book Lovers was definitely up there for me. I definitely want to do a reread of that one and see how I feel again. People We Meet on Vacation, just a really great vibe. I really loved them all. I want to give Happy Place another try though, maybe this year. Okay, now as someone who has watched Harry Potter, I cannot tell you how many times I've watched these movies. I cannot for the life of me remember if Goblet of Fire or Prisoner of Azkaban comes before. Which one comes first? I think it's in this order. I've watched it so many times, and so I'd never read the books, which is why I read them this year. I read them on audio. They were really good. I feel like because I'd watched them so many times, it definitely affected my reading experience because I just knew everything that was happening. I feel like if I'd have read the books first, I would have been like, this is the most insane series I've ever read and so good. But because I already knew what was happening, I was like, yeah, it's great, it's good, but it's just because I just knew the vibes. So I definitely am going to put them all in, maybe in Page Turner because they're just so great. I want to put I'm going to put maybe this one in Hidden Gem. Just not one of my favorites. The Stranger by Harlan Coben. I was recommended this by a family friend, which I find it a little scary because I'm like, I just don't read the same books as you do. So when you recommend a book to me, I want to be nice and say, yeah, of course I'll read it. But am I going to read it? I did read this one and it was actually, wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. It was a good book. It definitely was so easy to read. Fascinating story, but yeah, it wasn't the best thing I've ever read. Moving on to Crescent City. I read The Crescent City, the first one at the beginning of the year. I'm so sorry. It wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. It's definitely a fascinating storyline. I cried twice in that book. However, it just was so intense and really hard to get through. And same with House of Sky and Breath. I really love the ending of this. If you've read it, you know it had me giggling and I was so excited. I don't know. I'm not vibing with this series as much as I obviously have vibed with her other series, which you'll hear about later. Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is probably one of the only ones that I would say I'm going to put up in Hidden Gems. It was the first Ali Hazelwood book I'd read, so I had high hopes for her and it was good. It was fun, it was cute, it was easy to read. It wasn't the best thing I've read, but yeah, it was good and it had me giggling and had a very good tension. A Touch of Darkness. After I read this one, I actually rated it 5 stars. However, rethinking about it, I think I'm going to put it in Page Turner. I'm so fascinated by Greek mythology and I would definitely want to read more of this series. However, I don't know, I feel like I would need to continue on in the series or reread this book in order to know whether I would confirm rating it 5 stars. I just read it so long ago that I can't remember, but I do remember it being a really good book. The 7 Year Slip. This one's definitely Page Turner, very close to being 5 stars, and I actually cannot tell you what I would change about it to make it 5 stars. I don't think I would change anything, but I just didn't get that 5-star feeling, but it still was so good. Definitely on that line to get into 5 stars. The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret. These are the only other 2 Frida books that I've read. So we've got The Housemaid, which I'm going to put in wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I had a good time reading it. It was fine. Very fascinating. I think it was my first ever thriller, possibly. It was good, but nothing amazing. The Housemaid's Secret. This was my first DNF, and I think it was just based on maybe the time that I was reading it. I just was not getting into it, and so I was like, nah, I'm just not gonna finish this. I'm gonna move on to something else. So I think it was a soft DNF. I might pick it up later, but I have very low hopes of picking it up later. So maybe more of like a semi-hard DNF. Anyway, moving on to Daisy Jones and the Six. I'm so sorry to say I wasn't a fan. I can totally understand why people love this, and I can totally understand why people don't vibe this. I definitely can see why there are mixed reviews. I just was on that side of just not loving it. It just wasn't my vibe, especially it was just the way that it was written. Then we've got a Not So Meet Cute. This one was a reread. I love this series. This is a 5-star book for me. Love this series. It's by Megan Quinn, and she's just so good at making me laugh, making me Google. There's tension, there's banter, really good, smart. I just love it so much. When the Mood Hatched, I'm gonna say page turner. I really no, I'm going to put it in Hidden Gem. I actually really enjoyed this book. However, it's just so intense. There's so much going on. The world building's crazy. I'm sure you've heard. If you haven't, really prepare yourself if you're planning on reading this. However, it's very fascinating, and I am keen for the next book. This series, Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates. I read the first two at the beginning of the year, and I just did not appreciate them as much as I should have because I just didn't know what I was getting into. I thought I was getting into a cutesy little romance, and it absolutely is not that. So don't expect that when you go into it. Do expect just this really amazing series that will get better as you read it, and there's just a reason for everything. These books make you feel everything, mainly frustration, because it's just so annoying that they can't just figure their crap out, but it also is so good, and the character development in this whole series as a whole is crazy. I'm currently reading Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, and I'm only 4 chapters in and I've already cried, and it's just so intense, but it's so good. I'm going to put Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates in page turner because, like I said, I didn't appreciate them as much as I should have, and earlier this year I would have put them in probably Hidden Gem. Now reading the rest of the series, it's just all as a whole just so good. I do know that 100% Daisy Hates The Great Undoing is a 5-star for me. I loved that book. I cannot wait for the next 2 books that she's writing for them. Now Magnolia Parks, The Long Way Home. This book, I just don't know what to rate it. I think I'm going to put it in page turner. It's on the line to go to 5 stars. I love this book. However, there definitely were moments where I was just so frustrated, and I know that sometimes can be good, but it just, please. And then the ending, just one of my biggest triggers, but I also loved it. I was bawling my eyes out. Shut Out, this one, I cannot tell you what it was about, but I'm going to put it in Hidden Gem because I do remember really enjoying it. It was a hockey romance, I can tell you that. I remember enjoying it. I just don't really remember what it was about. The Book of Azriel, I just wasn't a fan, and I'm so sorry because this had potential, and I think it was just the time that I read it. Wrong place, wrong time. The Queen of Nothing, I'm going to put in Hidden Gem. I do remember enjoying this. However, I read it at the beginning of the year, so I really don't remember anything about this book. Then we've got Mile High by Liz Tomford. This one I'm going to put in Hidden Gem as well. This is a hockey romance, which I really love. Hockey romance is very easy to please me, and so this one wasn't the best, I have to say. However, I did have a good time reading it, and I've heard a really good thing about the rest of the series, so we'll see how we go with that. Throne of Glass. These were a reread this year, same as ACOTAR. However, I did not finish Throne of Glass reread, so I'm thinking of restarting it and re-listening to it. Yes, I am an Assassin's Blade first girly, and I will stick with that. Please read it first if you haven't read this series. I really enjoyed that one. I'm going to put that in page turner. I wasn't the biggest fan of Throne of Glass and Queen of Shadows, but they're still good books and you need them for the lead up for the rest of the book. These two I'm going to put in page turner. They're definitely close to being 5 stars. However, they're not quite 5 stars. I know some people, these are like, either one of those are one of their Roman empires, but I just think when I read them, I didn't appreciate them as much as I should have. I want to do a reread and like properly reread these again. Throne of Glass. This is my Roman Empire series. It's the first series that I read, got me into reading. I was not a book girly growing up, so this is just what got me into reading. So I will always have a special place in my heart for this series. I loved A Court of Mist and Fury, 5 stars, loved it, so good. Definitely one of my favorite books of all time. I'm gonna say Court of Silver Flames in Page Turner. I know that this one is very hit or miss for a lot of people, but I really enjoyed it. The rest of them, I'm gonna say Hidden Gems, because I really enjoyed those books, and I re-listened to this series these books so many times over and over. Again, this is a comfort series that I re-listen to all the time just because of comfort and joy. I love them so much. Then we've got The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This one I DNF'd. I'm so sorry. The science, I just can't get behind it. I just wasn't enjoying it as much. I definitely think this was a soft DNF and an actual soft DNF. Then we've got Usher's Voice, and I'm so sorry. I know everybody and their mother loves this book, but I wasn't a fan. I don't know if it was the time that I read it. No, I don't think it was. I just wasn't a fan. I just didn't really love this book, and I'm so sorry. I have nothing else to say about it. Then we've got Pucking You Around, which is probably the complete opposite of that book. We've got a hockey romance, and I'm going to put this in Hidden Gem, a hockey romance book that is 705 pages. That's right. It's huge, and it's just a romance book. However, it was really fun. I had a good time reading it. It is so spicy. It's a Why Choose romance, so there's a whole lot of P's in just one V, and it's a lot. And there definitely were some spicy scenes that I had to skip over because, oh man, that's a lot for just one little girly. But I still had a really good time reading this, and it was fine. It was good. And then the last book that I read this year was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I squeezed this one in because it's a little book, and it also is bee riding, and it's a cutesy little cowboy romance, which was so good, and it was the 100th book that I read, so that was really exciting. I really enjoyed this. I'm going to put it in Page Turner. It was just such a good time. It was really fun, really good. Loved it, and I can't wait to finish the series off. That is the 100 books that I read in 2024. I am so proud of myself for reaching that goal. I actually set my goal at the beginning of the year for 50 because I just, again, wasn't a huge reader. I'd just gotten into reading, so I thought 50, that's a huge goal, and I surpassed that. Double. So I'm very proud of myself. I have set my goal for this year as 100, so we'll see if we get over that. We'll see if I even meet it, because I definitely smashed out reading this year, but I do not feel myself losing that love for reading at all anytime soon. So yeah, this is all of the ranking that I've given them. I think that I've got them pretty spread out, which I feel like is good. Definitely don't have a lot in DNF Dungeon because, look, I'm not a DNF girly, but I do kind of hope to become one a little bit more this year, just because I want to really enjoy the books that I'm reading and not just push through just because I have to. And then 5-star reads, as you can see, I do definitely hand them out. I just don't hand them out a lot, and I'm definitely more based on vibes of books. I love those books. I look at them and I'm like, oh, they just have a special place in my heart. They're really good. So yeah, these are all the books that I read in 2025. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe if you want to watch some more fun bookish content, and I'll see you guys in my next video.